Hello everybody, we are Group 5, and today we will be covering Anne Washburn's Mr. Burns, a post-electric play. Here, we will be providing the context which is surrounding the play, a synopsis of everything in the play, information regarding the playwright, a look into why we read this play, and the details of our production pitch. The main piece of context you need to know about for this play is the pop culture phenomenon that is The Simpsons. The Simpsons is an animated American sitcom surrounding a family of 5, with Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie as that family, who act as a representation of the typical dysfunctional working-class family in America. It first aired in 1989 and is now the longest-running American sitcom, with 31 seasons and nearly 700 episodes. The show often parodies various pieces of pop culture, hosting a wide variety of references to movies, TV, music, and more. The show has had major impacts on animation, television, and even society in general. It is also necessary to talk about a specific episode of The Simpsons titled Cape Fear, a parody of the film Cape Fear. In this episode, The Simpsons enter the Witness Protection Program after murder threats have been sent to Bart. The episode has everything, including a wide variety of jokes, a climactic showdown on a boat for its finale, an Emmy-nominated score, and references to Psycho, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Goldfinger, Arthur Sullivan's HMS Pinafore, I Love Lucy, and more. It is aired in the middle of what is often considered to be the golden age of The Simpsons, and is often considered one of the series' best episodes by many publications.
Picture this. The play is set in the very near future, then 7 years after that, and 75 years after that. Act 1 is about survivors of a nuclear meltdown as they recall an iconic Simpsons episode, Cape Fear. They're coping with the world around them by coming together to tell this story in the best way they can. The story of The Simpsons is a way to cope with a decimated world. It is a retelling of a show that once brought happiness into the world. 7 years later, the same group as before is seen rehearsing a formal version of the story they were telling in the first act. A commercial has also found its way into the scene. It recalls some of the features of life as it was before the chaos. The Simpsons story has evolved. It is no longer the exact episode we have seen on TV, as it has gone through many minds and been slightly altered. It is at this point a myth. Act 3 is a full 75 years after the second act. It showcases what the story of Cape Fear has evolved into over the years. It shows a dark reality of how this world came to be, but gives a deep message: to meet my life so gloriously. The Simpsons story is no longer an episode spoof of a movie. It is the mythological retelling of how the world came to be.
Moving on to our playwright, Anne Washburn. Anne grew up in Berkeley, California. She participated in a lot of theater in her high school years, which is when she was first introduced to odd playwrights. She has an MFA in dramatic writing from New York University. Anne has 18 published plays, including titles like Apparition, The Communist Dracula Pageant, and the trans adaptation of Euripides and Orestes. She is also currently commissioned by MTC, Soho Rep, Yale Rep, and Playwrights Horizons. One important thing to note about Anne is her perspective on theater being more oral, and more about something someone says or hears, as opposed to theater being visual or spectative. Playwrights Horizons denotes Washburn as an uncanny genius for conjuring theatrical worlds that arrest and fascinate, even on unfamiliar wavelengths. A master of the gradual release of information, she trusts her audience enough to disorient us for a time, charting her course with quiet precision, even as she leads us down the rabbit hole. Mythic stories require continual adjustment, not only because some aspects of mythic realities evolve over time, but also in order to highlight details most relevant to listeners in particular situations, time periods, and cultural contexts. We thought this quote was important to include because of what is happening in the world today. So, why Mr. Burns? Well, this play is vital to theater makers because it ultimately asks questions about the nature of myth and how we tell it. Mythology scholar Joel Du Bois compared myths to maps adapting to fit the current landscape. At the heart of this play is the myth of Cape Fear, adapting to a new world. This play also speaks to how in times of crisis, people turn to those who make art, theater in particular, and we think everyone can relate to that now.
This play is about people finding comfort and adapting the remnants of the old world into a new founding myth. Our concept for Mr. Burns showcases the idea of adaptation in art and culture. We have the idea to, as the show goes on, continue showing that with different elements popping up in every act. We want to combine old elements of theater with new. To showcase the old, we're going to be setting it in a Greek amphitheater and utilizing natural lighting, as it states, within the script. Our plan is to have the sun set in the third act when it starts to get a little bit darker, and we're going to use some smaller lights like candles for that act. But the first two acts will be taking place in the evening, so the sun will still be out. 3 elements will mostly show these progressions. The first of them is the acting style, the second is the costumes, and the third is the use of music. In the first act, we're going to be showing remnants of the old world, or the world we live in today. It's going to be a very naturalistic acting style. The costumes will be modern clothes, but a little bit worn because it is post-apocalyptic, and the music will be modern music like we would listen to today. In the second act, we want to show a shift in culture, but there's still remnants of the old world left. We're going to have some realistic acting style. We're going to have some of today's fashions mixed with some new things that are fun. And finally, we're going to have some improvisation by instruments that maybe are a little bit wackier than what we would listen to today. Finally, in the third act, there has been a totally tonal shift to the play. Our lighting has shown that by it's become dark, it's become harder to see, and so we want to show the new world, which is fully realized at this point. We're going to use a representational acting style. The fashion will be completely new, simple yet distinct, much like we see in cartoons such as The Simpsons. We will also have Greek-style masks to denote the characters within the play. Finally, we will have a new style of music, unlike what we would listen to today, to show the change in culture.